I didn't expect anything to change when Dad remarried. I figured life would go on as usual, with maybe a new face around the dinner table, a few awkward family outings, and that strange feeling you get when someone new moves in but doesn't really belong. That's all I thought it would be. Just some woman trying to become a mother figure I didn't need, and maybe a daughter of her own tagging along. I had no idea what was coming. I had no idea it would be her. Riley, she showed up on a rainy afternoon, dragging a purple suitcase behind her and wearing this oversized hoodie with a band logo I couldn't name. She barely looked up at me. Just nodded, mumbled a hey, and kept walking past me into the house. No smile. No warmth. Nothing. At first, I thought she was just rude. Or maybe shy. But the way she carried herself, it was more like she didn't care. About anything. And somehow, that made me care. Because she wasn't trying to impress me. She wasn't trying to win me over. She didn't even acknowledge me beyond the bare minimum, and that irritated the hell out of me. She moved into the guest room next to mine. I could hear her through the wall sometimes, music, late-night pacing, occasional laughter on the phone with someone. And every time she came out, she acted like I didn't exist. But when we passed each other in the hallway, I felt her watching me. I could feel her eyes on the back of my neck even when I pretended not to notice. It wasn't constant. Just moments. Pauses. The kind that stick with you longer than they should. Our parents tried to force a bond between us. Sunday dinners. Movie nights. A day trip to the lake. None of it worked. We sat in the back seat of the car once, 2 feet apart, both staring out our windows like we were strangers who happened to live in the same house. That's exactly what we were, strangers forced to play family. Except strangers don't usually argue over laundry or who left the kitchen a mess. We did. It started small. She used the last of my shampoo. I accidentally unplugged her phone charger while she was sleeping. She stole my favorite hoodie and wore it like it belonged to her. I blasted music at 7 a.m. just to wake her up. We were constantly pushing each other's buttons, like two magnets that couldn't decide whether to pull together or push apart. It should have been annoying. And it was. But it was something else too. I didn't realize it at first, but I was starting to look forward to our arguments. Our sharp words. Her smirks. The way her eyes narrowed right before she delivered a perfectly timed insult. It wasn't normal. I knew that. But it felt alive. Real. Like we were playing some twisted game, and we were the only ones who knew the rules. One night, I caught her staring at me across the dinner table. Everyone else was talking, our parents chatting about renovations or some neighbor's dog that barked too much, but Riley just stared. She didn't smile. Didn't look away. She just looked at me like she was trying to figure something out. I swallowed hard and looked back at my plate. A minute later, she leaned over and whispered, "You always chew like you're mad at your food." I didn't know whether to laugh or slap her, so I just rolled my eyes and ignored her. But my cheeks burned for the rest of the night. Then came the prank. It was a stupid dare, started in a group chat I was added to by my friend Maddie. Everyone was sending each other dares and challenges. Silly stuff like text your crush or change your profile picture to a frog. Riley got added somehow. I thought she'd leave immediately, but she didn't. Instead, she joined in. Quietly. Casually. Then she dared me, sneak into my room and steal my hoodie. I stared at the message, confused. Was she joking? Was it some trap to get me grounded? But it felt more like a challenge. So I did it. Late that night, I tiptoed into her room while she was in the bathroom. Her lights were off, the moonlight cutting across her bed, where her hoodie was folded neatly. I grabbed it, heart racing. But as I turned around, she was there. Leaning against the doorframe. Arms crossed. Watching me. She didn't yell. Didn't even ask what I was doing. She just said, "You're braver than I thought." Then she stepped aside and let me walk past her, hoodie in hand. That moment stuck with me. Not because I got away with it, but because of the way she looked at me. Like she saw something in me. Something I didn't see in myself. The next day, she wore one of my shirts to breakfast. No words. No explanation. Just sat there eating cereal in my shirt like it was hers. I didn't say anything either. I couldn't. I caught myself thinking about her more than I should. At school. On the bus. In the middle of the night. I hated how she made me feel. Confused. Nervous. Alive. I told myself it was just because we were living under the same roof. Close quarters. Nothing else. But deep down, I knew. Something was starting. Something I couldn't explain. Something dangerous. She dared me again a few days later. Just one message, truth or dare? I stared at it for a full minute before typing, dare. Her response was instant. Tell me your biggest secret. My heart skipped. I almost laughed. But then my fingers started moving. I typed, asterisk sometimes. I think I like girls. Asterisk. I hit send before I could stop myself. The screen stayed blank for a moment. Then her reply came in. Just 2 words, asterisk me too. Asterisk, and everything changed. After that night, everything felt different, even though nothing on the surface had changed. We still walked past each other in the hallway without speaking. We still avoided eye contact when our parents were around. We still ate dinner in silence, with the sound of silverware clinking on plates filling the empty spaces. But now there was something buzzing underneath all of that. Something unspoken. Something alive. I could feel it every time Riley entered a room. Like the temperature shifted. Like the air got heavier and thinner at the same time. And when I looked at her, when I really looked, I wondered if she felt it too. The game didn't stop. It kept going. Almost like neither of us wanted to admit what had happened in that message. That single confession, me too, was a crack in the wall between us. But instead of tearing it down, we played around it. We turned it into something unspoken, a shared secret we both tiptoed around. I started checking my phone more often, hoping to see her name pop up. And it did. Not every day. Not even predictably. But when it did, my stomach twisted in this weird, nervous knot. She messaged again late one night. I was already half asleep, my phone lighting up the dark ceiling above me. One word, truth? I replied with a quiet, sleepy sure. Her question came seconds later. Did you mean it? I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, even though it was just a minute. My thumbs hovered. My heart pounded in my chest, too loud, like it would wake the whole house. I typed slowly. Yeah. I did. I hit send. The read receipt appeared almost instantly. She was waiting. Then nothing. No response. Just silence. The next morning, I came down to the kitchen and found her already there, leaning against the counter in that same hoodie, the one she dared me to steal. She didn't say a word. Just handed me a mug of coffee, black, the way she knew I hated it. I took it anyway. I think I smiled. I don't know why. Maybe it was the silence between us that made everything feel heavier. More intimate. Like we were having a conversation no one else could hear. That day at school, I couldn't focus. Every class felt like it lasted forever. Every hallway looked like a tunnel leading nowhere. I kept replaying that night. Her question. My answer. The silence. And the way she looked at me in the kitchen, eyes unreadable, but lingering a second too long. It felt like something was going to happen. I didn't know what, or when, but I could feel it building. Quietly. Slowly. Like pressure behind a dam. Then the group chat picked up again. Someone dared me to post a video of me singing in the hallway. I almost declined, but then I saw Riley had dared someone else to draw a fake tattoo on their face for a day. She was still playing. Still in the game. I figured if she wasn't backing out, I couldn't either. So I did my dare. Badly. Off-key. Blushing like an idiot. And then, without thinking, I typed a new dare. Riley, I dare you to sleep in my bed tonight. I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. It felt too much. Too fast. Too bold. But I didn't delete it. I didn't take it back. The message was out there, floating in the group, waiting. The others responded first, laughing emojis, shocked gifs, teasing comments, but not Riley. She didn't reply for 10 minutes. Then her message came, only if you promise not to snore. I didn't know how to feel. Scared. Excited. Maybe both. That night, I cleaned my room like someone was coming to inspect it. I fluffed the pillows. Changed the sheets. Lit a candle. Then blew it out 5 minutes later because it felt too much. I sat on my bed, heart racing, checking the time every 2 minutes. And just when I thought maybe she'd changed her mind, I heard a soft knock. 1, 2, 3. I opened the door, and there she was, in sweatpants and a tank top, barefoot, arms folded. This is stupid, she muttered, stepping inside anyway. It's just a dare, I said. She looked at me, serious, almost unreadable. Yeah, she said. Just a dare. We both climbed under the blanket. Back to back. No touching. The room was so quiet, I could hear her breathing. My heart was beating so loud it felt like it echoed. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. For a long time, there was only silence. Then, in the dark, she whispered, "Do you think about it? What it would be like, if it wasn't a game?" I turned slowly, facing her back. All the time, I whispered back. She turned too, our faces inches apart now. I couldn't see her clearly, but I felt her there. Close. Warm. Real. There was a pause, 10 seconds. A minute. Forever, and then she leaned in. Soft. Careful. Her lips brushed mine. It wasn't a movie kiss. No fireworks. No music swelling. Just quiet. Warmth. A feeling of falling without moving. My eyes closed. My hand found her wrist. And I kissed her back. We didn't say a word after that. Just laid there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the same silence but hearing it differently now. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone. But her scent lingered on the pillow. My heart was a mess. My head was spinning. And all I could think about was that kiss. That 1 second that changed everything. Because now I knew something I couldn't unknow. It wasn't just a game anymore. The next few days passed like I was underwater. Sounds were muffled, time felt slower, and every normal thing I did, brushing my teeth, walking to school, sitting in class, was layered with this strange, heavy awareness. I had kissed my stepsister, Riley. And not just a kiss that happened by accident or as a joke. It wasn't forced or faked. It was soft. It was real. And we both let it happen. I kept playing it over in my head, trying to make sense of it. Trying to decide if I felt scared, ashamed, excited, confused, or all of it at once. It didn't help that she didn't say anything about it afterward. Not in person. Not in messages. Not even a look. She acted like nothing had happened. That first morning, I found her in the kitchen drinking her coffee, scrolling her phone like always. I stared at her, waiting for some sign, anything, a glance, a smirk, a raised eyebrow, but there was nothing. Just Riley being Riley, cold and unreadable. I tried to mirror her calm. I sat across from her, picked at my cereal, and said nothing. But my stomach churned with the weight of what we weren't saying. Later that day, I got a message from her. Just one line, "Still playing?" It made my breath catch. Because I didn't know what she meant. Was she asking if I wanted to keep pretending? Or if I wanted more? I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. But I kept reading those two words, over and over, like a code I needed to crack. That night, I texted her back. "Yeah. Your turn." 10 minutes later, she replied, "Come to my room." The house was quiet. Our parents were already asleep. I tiptoed down the hall, heart pounding, trying not to make a sound. When I opened her door, she was sitting on her bed, legs crossed, wearing shorts and a hoodie. She didn't look up from her phone. "Close the door," she said, like it was nothing. Like I hadn't been shaking all day thinking about her. I did. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she set the phone aside and looked at me. Really looked at me. And I forgot how to breathe for a second. "I dare you," she said slowly, "to lie down next to me. Just like last time." Her voice was calm. Unshaken. Mine wasn't. But I nodded and walked over. I lay beside her, facing the ceiling. Silence again. I could feel the heat from her body. The way her breath slowed. The small movements of the blanket as she shifted. Every nerve in my body was on fire. We stayed like that for a long time. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe more. Then, softly, she whispered, "Did it scare you?" I turned my head. "What?" "The kiss," she said, staring at the ceiling like it held the answer. "Did it scare you?" I thought about lying. About saying no. But I couldn't. "Yeah," I whispered. "Because I liked it." She turned her head toward me, and suddenly her eyes were right there, inches away. "Me too," she said. And just like that, the wall cracked again. She moved closer. Slowly. Her fingers found mine under the blanket. Tentative. Careful. Like she didn't want to push, just invite. I didn't pull away. I didn't speak. I just held her hand, and for a moment, it felt like everything was okay. Like this secret bubble we were in was safe from the world outside. But I knew it wouldn't last. Secrets never do. The next day at school, something was different. People were whispering more than usual. Staring longer. My best friend Maddie barely spoke to me. At lunch, a girl from our class walked past our table and snorted, "So, stepsisters, huh? Gross." My stomach dropped. Riley kept her face neutral, biting into her sandwich like she didn't hear. But I could see her jaw clench. My hand started shaking. I didn't know how. I didn't know who. But someone knew. After school, I confronted Maddie. Pulled her aside, asked what people were saying. She looked guilty. Someone saw you too, she said quietly. At the lake house. Last weekend. They thought they saw something. My blood ran cold. There was no lake house trip. But we had sat close at the back of the car on that drive to the movies. She had leaned on my shoulder for a second when she was tired. It wasn't much. But it must have been enough. I went home that day with a weight in my chest. I wanted to run into Riley's room and tell her everything. But I didn't. I stayed in mine, watching the light fade through the blinds, feeling the pressure grow. Later that night, she messaged me. Truth or dare? I stared at it. Then typed, truth. She asked, if they found out, would you still choose me? I froze. My throat tightened. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say it so badly. But I didn't. I typed back, I don't know. She didn't reply. Not that night. Not the next day. And when I passed her in the hallway, she looked straight through me. Like I wasn't even there. That silence, her silence, was worse than any insult, any rumor, any stare from classmates. It hurt deeper than I thought possible. And the worst part was knowing I caused it. By hesitating. By not being brave enough. I kept thinking about her question. About what it meant to choose someone when the whole world might hate you for it. About what it meant to play a game that stopped being a game a long time ago. The next night, I left a note under her door. Just a single sentence, I was scared, but I still want you. I didn't sleep. I laid there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, wondering if she'd read it, if she'd tear it up, if she'd come to me again. When I woke up the next morning, the note was gone. And on my pillow, in its place, was her hoodie. The same one she dared me to steal. That was her answer, and I knew this wasn't going to stay a secret for much longer. The hoodie sat on my pillow like a message louder than any words she could have written. I held it in my hands, feeling the soft fabric, pressing it against my face like I could breathe her in through it. That familiar scent, faint perfume, laundry detergent, something warm I couldn't name, wrapped around me and pulled at everything I had tried to keep buried. I clutched it tighter and let myself close my eyes for a few seconds, just to feel like she was still near. But it wasn't enough. I needed more than fabric. I needed her. The silence between us, the distance that had crept back in ever since I hesitated, it was eating at me. I had to fix it, even if I didn't know how. I waited all day for her to say something. Anything. A message. A glance. A word. But she didn't. She moved through the house like I was invisible again, and that burned more than any argument could have. At dinner, our parents were chatting about some upcoming holiday plans, their voices cheerful and clueless. Riley sat next to me, chewing quietly, not once looking my way. I couldn't taste a single bite. My stomach was a knot. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, mumbled something about not feeling well, and left the table. I didn't even make it to my room before I heard her steps behind me. She followed me upstairs but didn't speak until I turned around at my door. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes weren't. They were tired. Hurt. Guarded. I read your note, she said. I nodded, heart hammering. And? I asked. She hesitated, arms crossed tightly like she was holding herself together. I wanted to believe you, she said quietly. But you said I don't know. And that felt like a knife. I swallowed hard. I know it did. And I hate myself for it. I was scared, Riley. Not of you. Of everything else. The whispers. The judgment. Our parents. Her eyes filled with something, anger, pain, maybe both. You think I'm not scared? She snapped. You think I didn't lay awake the whole night wondering what the hell we're doing and whether it's going to destroy both of us? I reached for her hand, but she stepped back. I get it, I said softly. You're scared. So am I. But I meant what I wrote. I want you. I don't care if the world burns around us. She let out a shaky breath, like she didn't know whether to cry or scream. Then, finally, she looked up at me with something softer. Then why does it still feel like I'm alone in this? Those words broke something inside me. I stepped closer, slowly, like I was approaching something wild and hurt. You're not alone. You never were. I was just too afraid to show you that. She looked at me for a long time, the tension still thick in the air. Then, slowly, she leaned her forehead against mine. I don't want to keep hiding, she whispered. Neither do I replied. But we have to be careful. At least until we know what we're doing. She nodded, reluctantly. So what now? She asked. Now, I said, wrapping my arms around her gently, we figure it out. Together. We spent the next week learning how to be something in secret. It was strange, this double life we were living. In front of everyone else, we were just two girls forced into the same household by marriage. Polite. Civil, maybe even friendly. But behind closed doors, we were something else. Quiet laughter under blankets. Fingers brushing in the dark. A kiss shared in the laundry room when no one was home. It was all stolen moments and soft touches and whispered truths. And somehow, that made it even more real. At night, we started sleeping in each other's rooms again. Not every night. Just when the need to be close was too strong to ignore. She'd sneak into my room, curl up beside me, and we'd just hold each other. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Once, while tracing circles on my arm with her finger, she said, I used to think I was broken. I turned my head, looked at her. Why? She shrugged, not meeting my gaze. Because I never wanted what everyone else wanted. I didn't feel that thing they talked about when they described boys and crushes and all that. But then you came along, and it scared the hell out of me. I held her tighter. You're not broken. You just hadn't found the right person yet. She smiled, but it was sad. It's messed up, isn't it? Falling for your stepsister? I didn't answer right away. I just looked into her eyes. Maybe, I said. But it doesn't feel wrong. Not to me. She kissed me then, slow and deep, like she was saying thank you with her mouth, but as much as we tried to keep things quiet, secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. Our parents had gone grocery shopping, and we were in the living room, watching a movie. We weren't even doing anything risky. Just sitting close, legs barely touching, heads leaning toward each other. But I guess we got too comfortable. Too careless. Because we didn't hear the door open, Riley had just tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear when the voice rang out from the hallway. Girls? It was my dad. I shot off the couch like it had caught fire, heart slamming against my ribs. Riley did the same, eyes wide with panic. We scrambled to put distance between us, but it was too late. They walked in, saw us, and even though nothing had happened, the energy in the room gave everything away. It was in our eyes. Our flushed faces. The way we jumped apart like we'd been caught doing something forbidden. My stepmom looked between us, her expression going cold in an instant. My dad furrowed his brows, confused. Is everything all right? He asked slowly. Neither of us answered. Riley opened her mouth, then closed it again. My hands were shaking. My stepmom crossed her arms. What exactly were you two doing? The room fell into a silence so sharp it hurt. I wanted to say something. To defend us. To lie, even. But I couldn't find the words. Riley spoke first. Her voice was low, but steady. We weren't doing anything wrong. My stepmom's eyes narrowed. So you admit something's been going on? Riley didn't answer. And that was answer enough. My dad looked between us, confused and growing more uncomfortable by the second. "Your sisters," he said, like he was trying to convince himself. Riley shook her head. "No. We're not." The silence after that was worse than any yelling could have been. Heavy. Icy. Crushing. The rest of the day passed in a blur. They didn't yell. They didn't accuse. But the tension in the house became unbearable. We were told to keep our distance. No shared rooms. No privacy. No excuses. We were being watched, like criminals on probation. And worse, Riley shut down again. She wouldn't talk. Wouldn't look at me. She withdrew into herself like a storm cloud pulling in before the lightning hits. And I started to wonder if the game we played had finally gone too far. The silence was louder than any punishment they could have given us. After they found us on the couch, after the way my stepmother looked at us like we were something disgusting, like we'd broken something sacred, everything changed. There were no screaming matches, no emotional outbursts, just cold rules laid down like stones between us. Riley was to sleep in her room. I was to sleep in mine. No shared spaces, no late-night hangouts, no locking doors. We were told this wasn't up for discussion. It was for the sake of the family. And the way my father said that, like we had betrayed some invisible rule neither of us had agreed to, made my skin crawl. I didn't cry. Not right away. I held it together, sitting at the dinner table in complete silence while Riley refused to even lift her eyes from her plate. We were acting. Pretending. Going back to being strangers under one roof. Except now, the silence wasn't safe anymore. It was suffocating. The first few nights apart were the worst. I couldn't sleep. My bed felt too big, too empty. I kept listening for her steps, the sound of her breathing from the other side of the wall, the little laugh she made when I said something stupid. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the house and the ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I thought she'd come to me. Thought maybe she'd sneak into my room like before, like we were still part of something. But she didn't. Not once. And that broke me more than anything. Because it meant she was scared. Or ashamed. Or maybe she regretted it all. At school, the whispers got worse. Someone had taken a photo, blurry, but clear enough. Riley and me, sitting too close at the movies. Her head resting lightly on my shoulder. The caption underneath said, *, keeping it in the family, I guess. *, I saw it on someone's story before they could delete it. My heart dropped. My face burned with shame and fury and something else, something helpless. I didn't even know who took the photo. And I didn't care. The damage was already done. I walked through the halls like a ghost. People stared. Some laughed. A few whispered just loud enough for me to hear. And Riley? She didn't say a word. She avoided me at lunch. Walked in the opposite direction when she saw me. She was disappearing, and I didn't know how to stop her. By the end of that week, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered her by her locker, grabbed her wrist gently, and looked into her eyes for the first time in days. Are we really doing this? I asked. She didn't answer. You're just going to pretend none of it happened? Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, scanning for anyone watching. Let go, she said under her breath. Please. I didn't. I couldn't. Talk to me, Riley. You can't just shut me out. She yanked her hand away and stared at me with something cold and unfamiliar. I'm trying to survive this, she snapped. Do you understand that? I can't survive it and hold your hand in the middle of it. I stepped back, stunned, like her words had slapped me. So you're just giving up? She laughed bitterly. You think I want to do this? You think I haven't been lying awake every night trying to figure out how we got here? But I can't fix it. I can't fix you. Those last words punched the air out of my lungs. I turned away before she could see the tears pushing at the corners of my eyes. I walked away, past the stairs, past the whispers, and didn't stop until I was outside the school building, breathing in the cold air like it could freeze everything burning inside me. I didn't go home right away. I sat in the park near the school, watching the wind shake the trees, listening to kids scream from the playground. I felt completely removed from the world. Like I was floating somewhere no one could reach. And that's when I took out my phone. I didn't know what I was doing until the message was already sent. Asterisk, if you ever loved me at all, meet me at our spot. Tonight. Asterisk, I hit send and stared at it for a long time, half hoping she'd ignore it. Half hoping she wouldn't. Our spot wasn't anything dramatic. It was just the back porch. The one place we used to sit in silence after our parents went to bed, staring at the stars like we were waiting for something to change. That night, I waited for her. Wrapped in a blanket, sitting on the wooden steps, I watched the moon crawl across the sky. The air was colder than usual. I shivered, but I didn't move. I told myself I'd wait until midnight, and if she didn't come, I'd know for sure it was over, but just before midnight, the door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to ruin the hope still flickering in my chest. Her steps were soft. Careful. Then I felt the blanket shift as she sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not sharp like before. Just full of everything unsaid. Then, quietly, she spoke. I didn't mean what I said. At school. I swallowed. Which part? She sighed. The part where I said I can't fix you. That was cruel. And wrong. You don't need to be fixed. None of this does. I looked over at her. Her eyes were glassy, reflecting the moonlight. Then why are you pulling away? I asked. She wiped at her cheek quickly, like she didn't want me to see. Because I'm terrified. This is the first real thing I've ever felt, and I don't know how to hold it without breaking it. My chest ached. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, even if I wasn't sure of that myself. But instead, I just said, then let me help you hold it. You don't have to do this alone. She leaned into me then. Head on my shoulder. No words. No kisses. Just warmth. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt her again. Not the girl hiding behind sarcasm or silence. Just Riley. The girl I had fallen for. The girl who was still fighting, even if she didn't know how. That night, we didn't sneak into each other's rooms. We didn't risk anything reckless. We just sat on the porch until the stars faded and the sky began to turn pale with morning light. And maybe nothing was fixed. Maybe the world was still against us. But at least we weren't against each other anymore. And that meant everything. The days after that night on the porch felt lighter, but only slightly. It wasn't that things had magically gone back to how they were. It wasn't like we could undo what had already been said, or fix what had already broken, but it was the first time in weeks where I didn't feel like I was sinking. Riley was still distant around our parents, still sharp and guarded at school, but now and then, when no one else was watching, she'd slip me a glance. A real one. The kind that said, asterisk, I still see you. I still feel this, asterisk, and even if we couldn't say it out loud, even if the words never passed our lips in the open, those tiny moments kept me going. We became experts in subtlety. Sitting a little too close when no one noticed. Brushing hands as we passed in the hallway. Leaving notes in each other's books like we were back in middle school. It was ridiculous and secretive and impossible, but it was ours. I'd find a crumpled note tucked under my pillow, 3 words, usually. Still love you, or missed your face, or once, when I'd had a terrible day and didn't say a word about it, I found one that just said, *, you don't have to be okay. Oh wait, *, that one stayed folded in my jacket pocket for days, the paper soft from how many times I unfolded and read it. We met at the porch almost every night now. Not to make out or hold each other like in some movie, but to talk. To breathe. To just exist next to each other without having to pretend we were anyone else. Sometimes we sat in silence, the stars watching us like silent witnesses. Sometimes she talked about her dad, how he used to buy her comic books every Friday before he left. Or how she never cried at funerals, but once cried over a dead bird in the garden. I told her about how I used to have nightmares so bad I'd sleep in my closet. About how I didn't really feel safe until she showed up and shook everything up. That was the strange part. Loving Riley didn't feel safe. But it felt like truth, and maybe that was better, but secrets like ours don't stay hidden forever. Not in a house like ours. Not with 2 adults who'd already started watching us like hawks. It was a Tuesday evening, just before dinner, when it all cracked open again. I'd come home late from school after staying for a club meeting, exhausted and emotionally spent. I was in the kitchen, grabbing water from the fridge, when I saw Riley's phone on the counter, buzzing. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. I didn't mean to look, but my eyes caught it before I could turn away. *, your little sister romance is making the rounds again. Want me to send the new screenshot? *, my heart nearly stopped. I picked up the phone, hand trembling, and stared at the message. It was someone from school. I didn't recognize the number, but it was clear, someone was watching us again. Someone was spreading more rumors. Maybe more pictures. My breath caught in my throat as I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw my stepmother standing in the doorway, eyes narrowing. She looked down at the phone in my hand, then back up at me. "Give me that," she said sharply. I froze. "It's Riley's," I said, weakly. "Now," she snapped. I handed it over, my chest tightening with dread. She looked at the message, read it, and her face went pale. That night exploded. There's no other word for it. When my dad came home, she showed him the message. And suddenly it was yelling. Accusations. Questions we couldn't answer fast enough. Riley came down the stairs halfway through it, confused at first, then furious when she realized what was happening. "You went through my phone," she yelled. "That's how little you trust me?" "Don't turn this around," my stepmother said. "We gave you rules. We told you to stop this disgusting behavior and you just kept going behind our backs." "It's not disgusting," Riley snapped, eyes burning. "You're just too small to understand it." That was it. The moment everything truly shattered. My dad looked between us, a mix of disappointment and something else, fear. "You're sisters," he said again, like it was the only argument he had. "No, we're not," I said, this time stronger. "You married her mom 2 years ago. We didn't grow up together. We didn't choose this." My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. "You think this is a phase or a mistake, but it's not. I love her. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore." The room went quiet. Silent. My stepmother's face was red with fury. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear. They gave us an ultimatum the next day. Riley would be sent to live with her aunt in another city until things calmed down. It wasn't said, but the message was clear, * you're being separated, * for our own good. For the family's image. For appearances. Riley didn't fight it. Not in front of them. She just nodded, eyes blank, lips tight. But when we were alone, sitting on the porch again, she broke. "I'm not strong enough for this," she whispered. "I thought I was, but I'm not. They're ripping us apart, and I don't even know how to fight back." I held her hand tightly, tears falling onto my sleeve. You don't have to be strong. I'll be strong for both of us. She looked at me, shaking her head. No. You can't fix this either. No matter how much we love each other, they're going to win. I didn't want to believe her. I didn't want to let them win. But I felt it too, that crushing weight of helplessness, like every word we said was swallowed by something bigger than us. I leaned my head on her shoulder. Then let's not let them break us, Riley. Let them take you away. Let them scream and panic and judge. But don't let them steal this from us. Don't forget it. Don't erase it. She didn't answer for a long time. Then she took something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. I opened it slowly. It was a drawing. Just a rough sketch in pencil. Two girls sitting on a porch under the stars. Holding hands. Heads leaning together. Us. I drew it last week, she said. So I'd remember what it felt like to be whole. My chest ached. I kissed her then, soft and slow, not for passion, not for desire, but to seal something between us. A promise she was leaving in 2 days. And I didn't know if she'd ever come back. But I knew one thing with painful, aching certainty, no matter what they did, no matter where she went, this wasn't over. They couldn't end us. Because we'd already lived the part they were trying to destroy. And you can't erase what's already been felt in the heart. Not even with distance. Not even with silence. The morning she left, the sky was gray. Not the kind of dramatic, stormy gray you see in movies, but the kind that feels empty, colorless, like the whole world is holding its breath. I watched her pack from the doorway of her room, unable to step inside, unable to speak. Her movements were slow but steady, folding clothes with precision, stuffing socks between the cracks of her suitcase like it mattered. Like any of it mattered. She didn't look at me. Not once. Not even when I finally walked in and sat on the edge of her bed, the same bed we used to share in secret when the world was asleep and the silence between us was filled with warmth instead of goodbye. Her room looked strange, half empty. The posters were still on the walls, but the colors felt faded. Her shelves were bare. The little glass cat she used to keep on her desk was gone. She'd taken it, probably first, and that hurt more than I expected. I remembered the way the sunlight used to catch it in the mornings, the way she'd pretend it was magic when we were lying there laughing at our own secrets. But now there were no secrets left, only goodbyes we didn't know how to say. Do you want me to help? I asked finally, my voice barely more than a whisper. She shook her head without looking at me. I've got it. There was a long pause. I studied her face. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you get from lack of sleep, but the kind that lives in your bones. The kind that doesn't go away. I wanted to reach for her, hold her, stop time, scream until the world gave us back what it stole. But instead, I just sat there, gripping the edge of the bed like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. They think this'll fix it, she said quietly, zipping up her bag. Like shipping me off will just erase everything. Her voice was bitter, heavy. Like we're a virus they can cure by splitting us up. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It won't work, I said, unsure if I believed it. We're not something you can erase. She turned to me then, finally, and for a second, her eyes softened. You still believe that? She asked. Even now? I nodded slowly. I have to. Because if I don't, then what was all of this for? She sat beside me, close enough for our shoulders to touch, and the silence wrapped around us again. But this time it wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was heavy with love, regret, fear, everything we'd been trying not to say since the moment we knew this ending was coming. Do you remember that night in the living room? She asked, her voice softer now. The first time I touched her hair? I nodded, blinking back the sting in my eyes. You tucked it behind my ear. Like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It wasn't, she agreed. I think about that moment more than I should. We sat there for what felt like hours, our thoughts louder than our words. Then she pulled something from her jacket pocket. A tiny envelope, sealed with a sticker. Don't open this until after I'm gone, she said, pressing it into my hand. Promise me. I stared at it, already feeling the weight of whatever was inside. I didn't ask what it said. I just nodded. Promise. When the car pulled up outside, I wanted to scream. I wanted to run downstairs and beg them to change their minds. But I didn't. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs as she rolled her suitcase out of her room, each wheel clicking against the hardwood like a countdown. At the front door, she turned to look at me one last time. Her eyes locked with mine, and there was so much there. Pain, love, goodbye. She didn't say anything. She just mouthed the words, "Don't forget me," and then she was gone. The silence after the door closed was unbearable. It echoed through the house like grief, like death. I stood there, unable to move, until I remembered the envelope clutched in my hand. I walked slowly back to my room, sat on the floor, and stared at it like it might catch fire in my palm. Then I opened it. Inside was a letter. Handwritten, a little messy. It started simply, I don't know how to say goodbye, so I won't. I'll just say this, what we had was real. What we have is still real, even if everything else tries to deny it. They can take me away, but they can't take what we shared. I don't regret any of it. Not a single second. I'll carry you with me, always. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them teach you shame. You are the bravest thing I've ever touched. I love you. I always will. I read it over and over until the ink blurred from my tears. I folded it gently, placed it in the box where I kept things that mattered, and laid back on my bed with my arms folded across my chest like I was holding something invisible. I stared at the ceiling and whispered the only thing that mattered, I love you too. The days that followed were strange. The house felt emptier. Colder. My parents avoided the subject like silence would erase the memory. They acted like Riley never existed, like she had always just been a guest passing through. But I remembered everything. I kept the memories alive like embers under my skin, burning quietly. I still looked at the porch every night, hoping she might appear. I still wore her hoodie when no one was looking. I still waited. Sometimes people asked about her at school. I gave short answers, kept my head down. The rumors had died down, but the stares hadn't. I got used to it. To being different. To being watched. But I didn't care anymore. Because I'd loved Riley. Fully. Fiercely. And no one could take that from me. Then one night, weeks after she'd left, I received a message. Unknown number. No name. Just one line, look up. I froze. My heart stopped. I walked to my window and pulled back the curtain. There was no one there. Nothing. Just the quiet night, the stars, and the porch, empty, silent. But when I turned, something caught my eye. A hoodie. Folded on the edge of my bed. One I hadn't seen in days. And on top of it, a note, soon. And suddenly, I was breathing again. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. Not even close. The moment I saw the hoodie on my bed, I forgot how to breathe. I reached out with shaking hands, touching the fabric like it might vanish if I moved too fast. It was hers. Riley's. The same faded gray hoodie with the frayed sleeves and the tiny ink stain near the pocket where she'd once scribbled on herself in class and laughed like it didn't matter. I pressed it to my chest, closed my eyes, and let the scent of her rush back into me, something warm, clean, and quiet. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, what I was feeling. I hadn't imagined the message. I hadn't imagined the note. Soon, it was her. It had to be. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to process it all. My heart thudded like it was trying to break out of my chest. I didn't know what soon meant, or how she even got into my room. The door had been locked. My parents were downstairs the whole time. There had been no sound, no sign. But she'd been here. She'd stood in this room. She'd touched this bed. That thought alone made me crumble onto the mattress, curling up with the hoodie clutched in my arms like it could hold me back together. I didn't cry. Not yet. I couldn't. There was too much swirling in my head, shock, hope, fear, the ache of wanting more. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation. Every sound outside made my heart jump. Every knock on the door made my breath hitch. I didn't know if she was coming back today, tomorrow, or a month from now. But the message was clear: she wasn't gone forever. And that alone lit something inside me I hadn't felt in weeks. I started going back to the porch every night, waiting. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes until the cold crept into my skin. I wore her hoodie like armor, like proof. And every time I wanted to give up, I'd remember the note. Soon then, one rainy evening, just as the sun disappeared behind thick clouds, it happened. I was sitting on the porch with my knees pulled to my chest, the hoodie pulled over my hands, when I heard footsteps on the gravel. Soft. Careful. Familiar. My heart stopped before I even turned my head. And when I did, I saw her, standing at the edge of the yard, soaked from the rain, her hair flat against her face, eyes wide and unsure. She looked the same and completely different all at once. Older, somehow. Quieter. But still her. Still Riley. I stood slowly, unsure if I was dreaming. Riley? I whispered, like saying her name too loud might scare her away. She nodded, teeth chattering slightly from the cold. Hey, she said, like we hadn't been apart for weeks. Like we hadn't nearly fallen apart completely. How did you? I started, but she cut me off, stepping closer. I couldn't stay away. I tried. I really tried. But every second without you felt like I was missing something important. Like I was walking through the world with a hole in my chest. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. You're here, I whispered. You're actually here. She stepped onto the porch and wrapped her arms around me before I could say anything else. Her body was cold and wet, but I didn't care. I buried my face in her shoulder and let the tears fall freely now, soaking into her hoodie. I missed you so much, I choked out. I didn't know if you'd ever come back. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her hands on either side of my face. I never really left, she said. Not in here. She pressed her hand gently to my chest. We sat inside after that, wrapped in blankets and the silence of reunion. She told me everything, how living with her aunt was like living in a prison, how she'd begged to come home and been denied again and again, how she finally snuck away after stealing her phone back and finding her way here without telling anyone. They'll come looking, she said, her voice low. I don't care. I'll face whatever comes. I just needed to see you. To feel this again. I reached for her hand, threading my fingers through hers. I don't want to hide anymore, I said. But I don't know how to stop. She nodded, eyes serious. We start small. One step at a time. We don't run. We don't lie. We just be. We spent that night together. Not like before, not in secret, not sneaking, not afraid. We didn't kiss under the covers or whisper in the dark. We just lay there, side by side, hands touching, hearts aligned. It was calm. Peaceful. Like breathing after holding it in for too long. The next morning, we came downstairs together. My dad was drinking coffee. My stepmom was flipping through a magazine. When they looked up and saw us, together, their faces said everything. Shock. Anger. Fear. Riley stepped forward first, her voice clear. I came back on my own. Because I belong here. With her. My dad opened his mouth to speak, but she didn't let him. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to support it. But you won't erase it. Not again. I stood beside her, my voice shaking but loud enough to be heard. We're not ashamed. We love each other. And we're done hiding that. The silence was long and awful. My stepmother stood up, face pale, her mouth tight. You're underage. This isn't a game. You're sisters now. This is wrong. I took a deep breath. No. We're not sisters. You married my dad 2 years ago. That doesn't make us family. What we are, we chose it. We felt it. You can't control that. There were no screaming matches that time. No slamming doors. Just tension, thick as smoke, hanging in the air for days. But we didn't back down. We stopped hiding. We held hands in front of them. Ate dinner side by side. Watched movies together like we used to. And eventually, the outrage faded. Maybe it didn't turn into acceptance, not fully. But it turned into tolerance. And that was enough. For now. Weeks passed. Then months. People at school stopped whispering. Some friends came back. Some didn't. But we were okay with that. Because we had each other. We had the truth. And we had the strength that only comes from surviving what tried to break you. One evening, sitting on the same porch where everything had started and almost ended, Riley turned to me and smiled softly. You know what I realized, she said. We kept saying it was just a game. But it never was. Not even from the start. I smiled back, leaning into her. No. It wasn't a game. It was real. All of it. We sat there, fingers intertwined, watching the stars appear one by one. Not hiding. Not pretending. Just existing. Together, and for the first time, it felt like we weren't waiting for something to break. We were just living the love we fought for. If you've ever felt like you were wrong for loving who you love, if the world ever tried to make you feel ashamed of your heart, remember this: the loudest love is the one that refuses to be silenced. And sometimes, the people who try to erase you are the ones who end up proving just how real you are. If this story moved something inside you, if it made you feel seen, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because every story deserves to be told. And every kind of love deserves to be remembered.